Programming is one of the most important skills that a hacker can learn. Not only do we often need to analyze source code, and knowing how to program can help us to do that, but we often need to outsource some of our manual tasks to the computer in order to speed up the process. For example, if you wanted to test 100,000 possible passwords that a user can have, if you try to do that manually, it will take you years or even decades, but a computer can do that in minutes, maybe even seconds. So we need to be able to communicate to the computer things that we need to do and things that we can tell it to do. And that skill is called coding. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a programming language which will enable us to do that. And that programming language is Python, a general purpose and very widely supported language that is quite easy to learn as well. And in this video, I'll cover basics, so how to set up Python, how to get the text editor that I'm using right now, which is Visual Studio. And then I'll cover some libraries in Python, like the request library, which will enable us to interact with websites and basically do things that are relevant to hacking. So the first thing you're going to do is actually test if Python's already installed on your computer. So if it's already installed, then we don't want to install it again, obviously. So if you're on Linux, you're going to just open up your terminal like I have here. And if you're on Windows, you can open up PowerShell. If you're on Mac, you can also just open up the terminal like in Windows, like in, Linux, same thing. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in the command Python like this. And if you get a terminal like that, that means that Python is installed. If you don't get it, then you're going to need to follow these steps in order to install it. So on Linux, it's actually the simplest to install Python. You can just use a command, right? If you just type in Python, you'll usually get a prompt to install it. So I recommend doing that there. If that doesn't work, then you can use the official Python installer from the downloads page, and it's obviously available to use it on Linux as well. So if you're on Windows, it's going to be a bit more complicated because you can't install stuff from the terminal. But it's also quite simple. You can just go here and just get the Windows installer here. So once you install this, I'll install it, I can't run it obviously. You're just going to click and then execute the exe, and it's going to take you to the steps to install Python. And hopefully when you go back to your terminal, once you've done that, you'll type in Python and Python will run like my one has just done as well. If you're on Mac OS, the process is exactly the same. You're just going to go into here for Mac OS, and then you're going to install Python here, for example. Now, there's obviously a lot of versions you can install. The one I'm using is 3.13.5 for no particular reason. So I recommend just installing the latest version. It's usually the most up-to-date one and has the latest security updates and stuff like that. So it's worth getting that one. And there is also one for Linux and Unix. And although I think it's just usually simpler to install it from the terminal unless you're using like a very niche Linux, then you can install it from there. But if you are using a Linux like that, then you probably already have Python installed realistically. So now everyone should be able to go to the terminal and type Python and have this thing come up. If you have that, then you can proceed to the next part of the video. Right, so the editor that I use is called Visual Studio Code, and I really like it because it has syntax highlighting. It also has a bit of Gen AI built into it, so you can speed up your development process a lot. And it's just nicer. It's nicer than using something like Vim or Nano on Linux. So I really recommend using this just to speed up the development process. So if you're on Windows, all you have to do is just download the installer, and their installer can just be found on the main page of their website. Once you do that, you just have to run the installer, right? If you can't do that, then I can't help you become a hacker. So hopefully you can just run the installer and it'll work, and then you'll have Visual Studio downloaded on your computer. If you're on Mac, it's really very similar. You just download the installer, you click on it, and then it's installed, right? On Linux, tiny bit more complicated. If you're using Debian, the most common system for hacking, that includes Kali, by the way, what you need to do is download the Debian package from their server. So, for example, this one here. And then what you're going to need to do is in the folder you have it installed in is run sudo apt install. And once you do that, it should download it for you. And the way you can run it from Linux is using this command called code, and that should bring up Visual Studio Code for you like this. If you're on Linux or Mac, you can just run it from the app screen, so like basically just on your like a desktop or something like that. So that's a lot simpler, but it's really easy to install this, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, once you do open Visual Studio Code, what you're going to have to do is install the Python extension. So hopefully you're able to open up Visual Studio Code once you've downloaded it from the website. And what you're going to do is download this extension called you're going to download this extension called Python. And this extension is just going to give you like the syntax support, and it's going to come with a lot of things like a debugger. It's going to allow you to run Python, and it's just kind of handy to have it. So once you have that set up, you have Python installed, and you have Visual Studio Code installed, and you have Visual Studio Code open. What you're going to do is just basically create a new file. You can create it anywhere, it doesn't matter. And you're going to call it app.py. So make sure it has that extension .py, because that's going to tell the compiler of Visual Studio Code that this is a Python file, and it's going to help you highlight the syntax and stuff like that. That's good. Once you have that downloaded, you can open it in Visual Studio Code. The way you would do that on Linux is by just typing code app. The way you would do that on Windows is by opening Visual Studio Code, going here and saying open file, and then going to app.py like that. So that's how you can open it on pretty much any operating system. So hopefully now you have Python set up, you have Visual Studio Code set up, and you have Visual Studio Code open on a Python file. So now we can continue, and now I can actually show you how to code in Python. Right, so I mentioned that Python is a very easy language to learn, and I'm going to show you now why. So the first thing we're going to do is just print hello world. It's going to just show us that, right? So once we say print, and then we can say hello world, right? Very simple enough. And we're going to just test that Python will actually run correctly. So you can bring up the terminal by hovering here, and then you can run Python manually from the terminal, or if you install the extension, you should have this little run button here, and that should just run Python for you normally, and should print hello world. If that isn't there, if that button isn't there for some reason, then what you can just do is bring up this terminal, go to where you have this file. So in this case, I have it here. So I think this will work on Windows, where you can say like this, you can do CD. I think it's slightly different, but it should be kind of the same. Bring in here, say like this, Python, that, and then say Python app.py, and it should still print hello world. And that's if you don't have that button. If you have it, just press it. I mean, you should really have it, because Visual Studio Code kind of comes with Python. So now that's how you basically run commands in Python. So the way you declare variables is just by typing the variable name and then giving it a value. So like this, you can just say print test. So we can just say declare test, and then we can just say print test like that. And then if you run it again, it'll say test. There's no types, and you don't really have to worry about like type checking or anything like that. It's not like Java, it's not like C, where you have to declare a string or something like that. It's a lot more simple. So if you want to declare a function, for example, so you want to make something like repeatable, we use the word def, and then we say the function name, like this, for example, and then Python uses something called indentation. That's where basically, instead of having like the curly brackets, we just like kind of like tab the line in here, and that means that this is inside the function. If we had something like this is in the function, but this isn't. So this is outside the function. So you do have to be careful of these indentations, because if you have something like this is going to be an issue, because it's not like formatted the same way. It's not in the same line, but this isn't an issue. So you should try and keep it. Visual Studio will do this for you though. That's why I recommend installing it. Right, that's kind of the basics out of the way. Now I want to show you some of the cool stuff you can do with Python, and mainly the hacking stuff we can do. And for that, we're going to need to install a few libraries. So to install a library in Python, we're going to use pip. That's just the main package manager for Python. And what we just type in is we say pip install, and then we type in the package that we want to install. So in this case, what I want to have is the requests library. So I'm going to say that. Oops. Yeah. So in this case, I'm just using main Python, so I'll just type this in as well. You might have to type this in if you're on Linux. Say that, and I already have it installed, so obviously nothing happened. But if you just installed Python freshly, then it'll install it for you. And then to import the package, so to install the library that someone else made for us, we can say import, and we can say import requests. That's good. So what does the request library do? So the request library allows us to send HTTP requests to other web servers. And this is useful if, for example, we want to interact with an API, so some kind of like application interface. If you want to test the website, so if you want to send a request with like different headers or something like that, this is really handy if we are want to automate something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send a request to google.com and basically show you how to do it. So let's say, yeah, right, this AI is coding a lot of this for me. Maybe I should turn it off, but we'll see. So for example, I want to say fetch a URL. So I'm going to write this script in here, and I'm actually not going to declare this inside a variable. I'm just going to say request.get URL, and then I'm going to say https://www.google.com. So that's basically going to send a GET request to google.com, and it's going to use Python for that. And if you're using Visual Studio, if you just hover over something, it will basically tell you how to do it for a lot of the libraries. That's good as well. So once we do that, we want to declare it as a variable, right? Because we want to save its response. The response is going to get returned by this function. And now we're going to print out what the response is. So we're going to say request dot, I think it's content is what it's going to print out for us. So let's click the run button again and see what happens. And as you can see, it's printed out the response for us. It's obviously huge. It's a load of HTML. And if you're confused about HTML, then you can also watch my previous episode, which explains a bit of HTML. Well, we can format this nicer if you want, but I won't show that for now. But the main thing is that we can now send requests to different web servers. So this might be useful if you want to chain a couple things together, if you want to do like a loop and send multiple requests and things like that. That's what this would be very useful for as well. So we can send requests. Let's say we want to add cookies though. We want to like authenticate ourselves, or we want to add headers. So the way we do that is by adding like these parameters here, right? And you see the AI autofilled a little bit for me here. And the way we write cookies is with a dictionary. So in Python, you have arrays and you have dictionaries. For example, we can say here, we can say say cookies is like this. So a dictionary is with these curly brackets, and then you have this little colon in between them. So this is the key, and this is the value. So the way we access values in the dictionary is by saying cookies, and then we can type in the key here. And this will basically give us the value. So this would return cookie value here for that. Then we can also set it like this, and then we can create new values in it as well. But that's different from an array, which looks like this. Array doesn't have keys, it just simply has entries. So it would be like this, and there would be no colon in between them. And yeah, that's basically the two kind of data types that you most use in Python. So for the request, we're going to use a dictionary. And this is going to be the name of our cookie. And then this is going to be the value that it takes, right? So maybe I'll show you this in Kaido. Hold on. Let me just get a request that actually has cookies in it. Yeah, okay. So if you see here, we have the cookie name, and then after the sorry, hold on. I'll show you one just Yeah, okay, here you go. So here you have the cookie name, and then here you have the cookie value. So this is going to turn into the key in the dictionary, and then this is going to turn into the value of the dictionary, right? That's good. Okay. So now we can send it in, and we'll print it out again. Maybe I'll just print the whole request out so it just shows you that the cookie went through. But just to show you that the cookies actually work, I'm going to print out the headers of the request that I'm sending in. And as you can see here, we printed it out and cookies has been appended right there. So example cookies, the ones I sent in. That's how we can authenticate ourselves when sending requests. So if we want to send headers, we can, for example, type in the same thing. We keep it as a dictionary, but we can change this to headers. So we don't use this cookie value anymore. We use this value called headers, which is just going to insert our header. And it kind of works the same as the cookies, where the initial key here turns into the header name, and then the cookie value here, you can see, turns into the header value. So it's going to kind of get inserted. And I'll just show you how that looks in a minute. If I run this here, you can see that this header here is example cookie, and then this header here turned into cookie value. So instead of being appended into the cookies like you can see above here, it's just turned into a separate header in itself. So we can send headers that way. We might want to send like an API key that way, and so the website is we can authenticate to the website and perform actions that way. So that's very useful. This is probably the most useful library you'll use in Python, and it's really kind of the foundation for being able to automate your workflows. For example, if I wanted to make a for loop here and loop over like multiple requests, send like requests in parallel and stuff like that, I could do that with Python. And I'm also just going to show you one thing, which is basically how to use AI for Python. Python is a very common language, so ChatGPT and other AIs are very good at writing scripts for you. So let's just say here I have, this is just ChatGPT open here, but I have it configured in Visual Studio. Say, write me a script which sends a request to www.google.com 10 times using a loop. So now I can just send it straight in, and it's generating the request you see from me. Accept them, and now it's changed it so that this request is sent 10 times, and every single time it's going to print the headers for me as well. So I could run that. I will run that actually, we'll see. So this is generated purely by AI. So that's another benefit of Python. It's very good for artificial intelligence, and it's going to speed up your development a lot. So it's good now that we can send requests, but we might also want to take stuff out of those requests. And for that, we're going to use something called regex, which means regular expressions. So regular expressions will basically allow us to find things in requests and either basically find them, or we can also replace stuff in requests that we sent, and then obviously take stuff out of the responses as well. So let's just keep this as here. We're going to send the same request with google.com. And instead, we're going to import another library as well. That library is going to be called RE. You don't have to install this because this is installed in Python by default in most versions of Python anyway. So now that we have that installed, we're going to say basically, we're going to say in the result of that request, we're going to try and find something, and we're going to say re.search, and we're going to say we want to find, for example, we want to find like a H1 tag in there, and that's going to be based on the content of the request. And you might want to actually decode that as well, because it comes in bytes by default, but we want to obviously have it in plain text. So after we've done that, we're going to want to print whatever the result is, and let's run that and see what happens. So it hasn't found anything, which probably makes sense because there might not be a H1 tag in this. So let's try and find something else. Let's try and find, for example, the word HTML. Let's see what happens there. We'll do the same thing, run it, and it's found it. So it's found the word HTML, and it'll return it in this kind of strange thing if you print it like that. If you want just the word, for example, you can say dot match, then it will return this thing for you. And what this stuff means basically here, it's from where to where, so the first sort of occurrence of it, first character, so it's after 10, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 9 10, and it's spanned till 14, so that's what that means. And then the second part is just the word that was matched. So why might this be useful? Well, if you want to sort of find things in requests, like you want to, for example, loop over some JavaScript or find stuff like that, then this library is very useful. We can search for stuff and then we can find them. Now, there's a couple of different ones. So there's search, which always finds the first one. So search will always return the first one to you, and it's whatever the regex is. Split will divide the text based on the character you give it. So if you gave it HTML, it will divide it into a couple of strings, and then sub will replace whatever the value is with whatever value we give it. Now, that was fairly simple. So that was just basically finding a single word. We might want to find something more specific than that, right? And what we can use for that is regex. Now I have a video on regex actually in the works at the moment, so I won't go into it in huge detail. It's a way of telling the computer to look for specific patterns and match it based on that. So the AI just generated something for me here, and that will basically match anything that is inside the title here. So it'll match the title and then it'll match whatever is inside of it. You don't have to understand this, it looks quite complicated, but I just want to show you what you can actually do with regex. So if I run it now, oh, yeah, sorry, I need to change this to text, I think probably the handiest here. Change this to text, and then you can see it'll return Google for me. It'll return Google because we've asked it to return the value in between the title. So if I go back to the content that it's returned, see if we find title, which should be somewhere top. It has title and it has Google in between it. That's one thing we can actually do with our regex, and this will work for any website we ask it to go on. If I go on example.com as well, then we send a request to it, see it'll return whatever is in the title there. So this is very useful for taking stuff out of requests and then reusing it ourselves. Okay, just to end off the video now, I'll show you something that we could actually do, which would kind of actually be useful in terms of a bug bounty perspective. Now, let's say we wanted to extract all the links from the website of google.com, and we want Python to print them out for us. This could be very useful because in a website, the links will often point to different directories, and that could help us discover more things to hack on. So instead of coding it ourselves, which I really never recommend to do, first thing we're going to ask is to look at AI here. So we need to formulate the question correctly, which asking AI is actually a skill in itself. So we're going to say, create a script which sends a request to google.com. Maybe we'll type that in a bit better, to www.google.com, and then extracts all the links using regex. So we're going to ask it to do that, and as you can see here, it has now given us some code. So let's see if this works correctly. And yeah, it seems like it actually extracted all the links for us. Now, do be a little bit careful with some of this AI code, right? I said all the links, but this might actually, it doesn't always work at extracting all the links, right? So even though it extracted everything from this ref tag, there might be more links still available on google.com. The reason is there could be some links in comments, often left by developers. There could be links in JavaScript, which is actually a lot more common, where the JavaScript often accesses some backend API. and there could just be more links stored somewhere in a tag which is not in ref, like a custom tag like data/URL or something like that. So AI is good, but we need to also take account edge cases, which AI often doesn't. So if we wanted to like customize this, we could say like if we wanted to find tags from a URL, for example, we could do it like that. So knowing how to use regex as well, and knowing how to code in Python is important. And pasting stuff in just from ChatGPT will often give you good results, but if you want to be 100% sure, then you should go out and check for the edge cases. For example, I was looking for a GraphQL regex, which would extract GraphQL queries, a type of API, from a website, from the JavaScript. Well, it was able to extract stuff from single line JavaScript comments. So like, for example, something that looks like this, like just like a regular like string, and it was just like single line. Well, in JavaScript, what you can do is create multi-line comments. So you can do something like this, then you can have a string like this, right? And then you can have stuff in between it. And the regex that ChatGPT gave me was basically not working for that, and it was missing like basically all of it. So I had to go back and remake it myself, because although it gave me a good skeleton for what I needed, it didn't fully cover my needs. So that is something you need to take account on, and learning how to use stuff like regex is going to be very good for us. But also always use AI to save time, because we as hackers, we don't have a lot of it. It's a lot to go through, so set up stuff like ChatGPT for yourself and save a lot of time. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video on Python, and I hope you learned a little bit about how you can use Python to automate some of your workflows and just save you a little bit of time, outsource some of the labor to your computer. And I also want to say as well that I have a bug bounty program, and it includes 12 hands-on practical labs that you can try out yourself. And it actually is based on real bugs that either I or other bug bounty hunters have found. And even some of the problems you can even solve using Python. You can code exploits yourself. So I do recommend you try it out. The link is in the description. And I'd like to thank you for watching as well, and happy hunting.